Hello YouTube, Robin Hood Bricks here, and welcome to our 100th video special. Also in attendance is Her Majesty the Queen, who's presenting Robin with a gold cup to commemorate this memorable occasion. Well, to start off this 100th video, I thought I'd say welcome and thanks. Welcome to all of my subscribers, old and new. I've got a great number of new subscribers, fortunately, as the channel is growing at a rate of knots at the moment, partially due to the subway system and the castle and so on. But also thanks to all those subscribers who take an active part in the channel, giving comments and encouragement, which is really appreciated. Keeps me going when energies are low. And some of the suggestions I've had have been really helpful and have really helped augment the city with subtle changes in some cases and really clever additions in others. So thank you very much for all of that, and long may it continue. Now I thought what we'd cover today, as there's quite a lot to cover that we've done so far if we're going to try and cover everything, but I thought I would go through some of my design rules, the sort of backbone of how I decide what to include and so on and what not to include. Then look at some of the progress we've made to date in a bit more detail. Then I'll touch on my plans for the city and my plans for the channel. Now the first one of my design rules is to go 3D. In past cities that I've made, not on my channel, I've had a very typical city, like many builders, that's completely at one level and 100% flat, which might be representative of Denmark itself, but nonetheless is a little boring. And some people get around this by having, say, a feature on a mountain or something like that, or maybe one raised table that allows trains to go through a tunnel or something like that. But I wanted to take it to the next level and have more subtle changes in between all those different levels as well. So the first thing I wanted to do is incorporate as many different levels in my planning as possible. And there are lots. First of all, we've got the underground level, which is right down here. And that's obviously got the underground train on it. But we'll also potentially even have, I thought the other day, some underwater scene underneath the river. Second layer I've got in my city is sea level, which is obviously here with all the boats on and is the same level as what I've got in the harbour. The third is this, what I'm calling mezzanine level, which is what the Marina upper level is, and that's 5 bricks and a plate above sea level. And then we've got the general road level, which is what all the roads and the surface rail are on. Then we're at a higher level again for the castle, so that's 5. In the harbour, there's another level which is just 2 bricks above sea level, so that's 6. Then ultimately I want to do an under the ocean scene, which will be based on the floor, so that's 7. And then I like to hang planes in the sky, which you saw in the last area, and helicopters attached to buildings. So the helicopters could be the low flyers, so that's 8. The planes could be high flyers hanging from the ceiling, so that's 9. And then the very top, I've got actual space stuff and satellites and things like that will come, which will be the 10th layer, space. And that's represented by the ceiling itself. The second of my design rules is don't stop at the walls. Basically, I'm a big fan of the facade, using buildings that are only 1, 2 or 3 or 4 bricks deep to represent a much bigger building that goes on into the wall, but also having roads going up to and sort of into the wall, and even having part buildings where it's literally cut off like a guillotine at the wall, but obviously the building's a lot bigger and goes through. And that enables us to have a lot more interesting things in our city, which otherwise we might not have room for. A key example is something that isn't in my city yet, but is an airport. Lego airports are fantastic, but so space hungry. So as a result, what I plan to do is to have the periphery of an airport with the main terminal building and maybe one plane, but with a suggestion that it's going on for much more outside the space of the room. The third of my design rules is density. I want to get an absolute much Lego as possible in my city. Now, some people prefer this sort of spaced out look in that there's gaps in between everything and everything's very easy to see. But I prefer the fact that everything's on top of itself and you really have to sort of peer amongst and around things in order to see everything. In a way, it's a lot more like real life, like a real bustling city. And that's why I like, again, the facades on the walls, because it gives that level of depth. Having multiple layers of buildings, for example, here with the facade on the wall, the modular, one row of buildings, and then another row of buildings in the foreground. I also quite like having very tall things in between short things, so you can't see the thing behind from all angles, and you really have to peer around to look at them. A lot of people go for the very stereotypical small things in the foreground, tall things at the back, but I think it's much better to mix things up. Another thing is to have things layered on top of each other. So we've got the castle over the railway tracks. We've also got a tram line all along the back wall here, above a railway track. We've got one railway track going through and under our multi-storey car park, and countless other examples as well. Not to mention our subway train going underneath the lot. My fourth design rule is diversity, and I want to have as much variety as possible. Although I'm a real fan of things like double modulars, i.e. putting the same modular next to itself so it looks a lot bigger, I also think this is a problem, because although it looks very grand, you're using two base plates to sort of show off one thing. Whereas if you had two separate buildings using the same two base plates, you'd have two things. And I think that's much better. So although I'm very happy to go up, like my Grand Emporium and Casino, I think it's better to use many small buildings rather than just have row after row of large modular buildings. This also extends to vehicles. I want to have as many different vehicles as possible. I want to have planes, spaceships, helicopters, boats, hovercrafts, cars, bikes, vans, trains, trams, underground trains, windsurfers, surfers, jet skis, you name it. I want one of everything. And with that in mind, I have things like collecting all the different types of hull shape in the boats in my marina. And I've even got a good assortment of all the bigger hull shapes in my harbour. This level of diversity also extends to eras of sets. I don't want just super modern sets, I want some older ones as well. The really old ones tend to not fit so well, so you have to be more selective with those. But I don't want to have everything brand spanking new, because I do use a lot of standard Lego sets in my city, just with smaller tweaks as well as ones that have been completely rehashed. And I think the third thing I like to do in diversity is to have as many different themes as possible. Although the majority here is city, we do have obviously a castle from a castle theme. We've got some pirates, Spider-Man, junior stuff, and all sorts of different themes. The fifth of my design rules is to build with a Lego city style. A lot of what I build is based on sets, though I do a lot of mocks as well. But I really don't mind the shortcomings that some people see of having open back buildings, or indeed buildings without steps going up to them, because I'm not trying to replicate reality. I'm trying to build a Lego city, not a real life city. And as a result, I have absolutely no problem with open back buildings or buildings without stairs. as long as the main rule is maintained, which is that from the main viewing angle of the room, which for me is the door into the Lego room, that from that angle, no open backs are visible. And as long as that rule is maintained, then I'm very happy to have what some people would term as unrealistic buildings. So those are the 5 main design rules that I follow when building my city. I do have another few supplementary rules. For example, no residential. That is just because residential houses and flats are a bit more boring in my view, so I only really have those in facades, like this one for example, where it's not really a waste of space, because it's a city centre after all, so I want to have shops and businesses and really interesting things instead. Another rule is only using Lego elements. I think if we get into the dangerous ground of 3D printed parts or printed parts, then the options become so limitless as to make it actually harder rather than easier. I think it's an extra challenge in a way just to use the parts that are available to achieve something special rather than just inventing what isn't there to start with. Another thing I like, just personal taste, is only to use yellow-skinned minifigures, just because I don't think the flesh tones and the yellow go very well together. So it's one or the other, and yellow is a lot more common. And I also think the yellow faces are very characteristic of Lego and something that should be maintained. And another supplementary rule is to use power functions wherever possible. So if it's some public transport, like my lovely tram peeking out there behind the building, then it will definitely have to be powered, as that is. All my trains will obviously be powered, and I've also got the Vestas wind turbine and a motorised Coast Guard helicopter at the moment, but in the future I'm going to have lots and lots of motorised fairground rides and motorised anything else that I can fit a motor in, quite frankly. Right, so I'm going to go handheld now and show you some of the details around the city. But do note that absolutely everything you see has its own video, because what I've been doing is recording the entire journey of building this city, which does mean that some videos are slightly less interesting than others. Some people don't like the halls, for example, but I would rather record the entire progress of the city, warts and all, rather than just show you the really interesting parts. And then you get a really good feel. And I know that some people have really enjoyed that because they've actually started watching the whole journey right from the beginning, from video number 1, and either making their way or just finished. I know a few people have just finished getting right up to date. So why not try that? Okay, so I'm going to start at the harbour with the noisy bits being the motorised Coast Guard helicopter. 7738, fantastic set. There are quite a few like it, but I don't know if the others will be big enough to fit in power functions. And there's the Coast Guard diver coming down to help the stricken man with his shark repellent and his shark problem. The other motorised thing, while we're on motorised things, is the Vestas wind turbine, which has got its very ugly hill removed, and all the gubbins is underneath the base plates on one of my different layered tables, and that goes all the way down under here, and at the moment pops out there, but I'm going to build that into the cliff face, which will be linking these two tables, and that'll be a hidden feature. Now going along this side, I've got the hidden side shrimp boat with some minor amendments, mainly getting rid of the sort of large wheel thing on the back, so there's lots of room for crate after crate of shrimp. Some more cargo there. Seagull. This is a movable crane gantry. We've got somebody picking up some fish from the fishing boat that has sprung a leak. And we've got the large container ship which is one of the best sets I think Lego's ever done. I think it's fantastic. And the crane for that, and that's got an ISO container of liquid gas. Then we've got one of my favourite old sets from the pirate range, being the Eldorado Fortress, and that is now a tourist destination, and we've got actors dressed as pirates who are stealing a treasure chest, and then there's tourists taking photographs with the inhabitants of the fort. And above that is the adventurers Zeppelin, full of adventurers going off to have adventures, believe it or not. So I've turned off the motors just because that was getting a bit noisy. So we've got a lot of buildings along the quayside. There's Carl's Cargo, a jet ski coming out of a container, and some baddies using a welding torch on some handcuffs. Then we've got another crane, blue this time. Dock 13, which if you open the door you'll see are some more baddies, and in there they're trying to break open a safe. And we've got the wonderful green container ship, which I've modified so it's got 3 cargo holds rather than 2. There's plenty of room for those. And the hopper thing that puts it onto a lorry. And then another shack from a police set, and that's actually got undercover police using the periscope and some sound equipment to spy on some of the baddies from either Carl's Cargo or Dock 13. And then we've got the City Lines office with the harbour master and the fencing, as this is a bonded area, and a security thing there from one of the Batman sets guarding this long pier, which has both a slip road to a ferry and this long pier here using these fantastic old yellow legs, sporting a pair of blue cranes from the heavy haul cargo train set 60098. And we've got some cargo with Dr. Inferno's logo on coming down to be delivered at Dr. Inferno's warehouse, which uses 2 sets of Doc Ock's hideout joined together to make a really beautiful looking secret base. Very secret because it's got loads of obvious baddies outside it and a great big sign, but nonetheless. Have a look inside there in a minute. And this demonstrates some of my design features quite well, in that we've got sea level, obviously. We've got the second level being that the quayside is actually 2 bricks above sea level. So you can see it's raised subtly, and that just helps a bit, but it continues at the same level onto this road piece and behind the green ship as well. So this is all raised up by a couple of bricks. And we're also using the wall in that road goes off into it, because if we had to link this area with the rest of the city, they would have to have a road going all the way from over there to over here, which makes it a lot harder to do. But it'd have to go over 2 railway lines underneath the tram line, and it'd just be really complicated. And it'd have to go downhill by a few bricks. So instead of doing all that, have a road going off into the background, and then the link between this road and the rest of the city will be done in another part of the city beyond the wall. So here is Dr. Inferno's base, and in it they are building a very large mech for him to take over the world, presumably, or definitely dominate Brick Nottingham, and that's full of his employees hard at work building and maintaining this wonderful creation. And these roof pieces just pull off very easily indeed. Now, to finish the harbour area, I may as well look into the sky and we'll see parachutist, another baddie, DB Cooper, on his parachute as he's just jumped out of a passenger liner with his ransom money, leaving the air stewardess distraught at the open door of the red jet, and that was being stalked by a police jet, just like in a real story. If you don't know that story, the video on this does cover it, and my recommendation for this area is the two-parter warehouse and mech factory, which show how I put this together in a lot of detail. So the next area of my city starts at the other side of the harbour. I'm now standing in the first sort of hole in all the tables. You can see next to the harbour is a double train line with my preferred system of ballast and my own personal design of corner ballast, which is very sort of low profile but 3D as well. I've done a video on how I do that, so that may be of interest. And you can see here that we're a few bricks higher than the other side of the wall, and quite a few higher than sea level as well. And the bit I'm standing at the moment represents Brick Bay, being the watery bay that goes out to sea over there and has the marina on one side, the river, which is temporarily out of position there, feeding it, and we'll have the beach opposite the marina. So this will be somewhat of a headland, this bit. I'm going to have a restaurant on there and some cliffs and two rail bridges going off to the other side of the bay. So here we've got the first of our tram stops. I'm going to have at least 3, 4, 5 of those ultimately, and we've got an unfortunate man falling down the stairs. And here's a good example of a visible play feature, as well as the cranes we looked at earlier. I don't mind that. I think that is part of Lego and looks good. And here we've got a park with a birthday party happening. My favourite bit being the dog with the hat. And this is a good example of maintaining the viewing angle, i.e. if I had an open backed building here facing the road, then the open back would be very visible from the door to the Lego room, which is over there. So I don't want that. So something like a park is see-through. It doesn't really have a front or a back as such. So it's a very good way of using that space. And also the green base plates of the park link great with the green base plates of the railway lines as well. Then we've got Town Hall with a happy married couple and the mayor. Now she is breaching technically my yellow faces rule, but I'm saying that's because she's got a very, very bad fake tan, because she's a lady who likes using that sort of product. So that's why she's a funny colour, because she's a funny colour. And then the boardroom has been extended and is being used by the supervillains, which I think is a hilarious idea. So these are all the supervillains from the Ultra Agents line, Lego's own sort of superhero line. And they're all in there, led by Antimatter, the boss, who's bent on global domination. That's why he's got his globe up there. And they've got the hall until 4:30 when the mayor needs it back. So with the roof back on, we've got Batman, and he has got a yellow face. So that's maintaining that rule wherever possible. Then we've got Assembly Square with only a few minor tweaks to it, because it's a fantastic set, that one. And I'm a firm believer in using trans-clear pieces for low-flying aircraft. So there's a nice TV helicopter. Then we've got a very underappreciated set, being the multi-storey car park. The set's actually called City Garage, but I think that set's fantastic. I've sort of amended it a lot, so you can look at the video for that set as well. And it's got the Bricktown parking signs, which I've got 2 now. Security at the base. I've got a Mini going in and a granny on her mobility scooter coming out. I've got a tutorial how to build that as well. And I think this is a underappreciated set because it's technically a modular. I mean, it fits seamlessly with the other modulars. It is actually 48 studs deep rather than 32. And that means it just hangs back, as you can see from the other ones. But I've actually got a rail line going under and through it, as you can see on the near railway line. And the back railway line has got the elevated tram all the way along it. And then behind the tram line are some facades. Now I'm going to continue those all the way along until the Vestas turbine. But for now we've got a large office block with President Business on the top floor in his double height office. And I've got Ari's deli on the ground floor of this one. Very hidden, but it's nice to see and look for and find these details in a sort of lovely red brick building with Sherlock Holmes on the roof. Then we've got the brick bank, which is pretty much unchanged, I think. There's a man with a Zimmer frame or a walking frame. This everyone will recognise as the Grand Emporium. But the top floor, with the black windows rather than the dark green, is the casino, which I'll show you the inside of in a minute. And then we've got Leicester on the second of our tram stops. An elevated one with some stairs down, you can probably just see. And behind that is another facade, being a construction site, which is fed by a large building crane. You can see there's a lot of detail on that one. That's another video I'd definitely recommend seeing, with the paint spill going down the different levels of the scaffolding, and they're building a school. And then we've got the corner station, which is utilising the corner of the room very well. Bit of a hard space to use. And it's using the walls to show that just because it's cut off at those weird angles, it's actually going into the walls, as I described earlier. And a low-flying plane overhead. And we've got 2 more facades, being a hotel, using a hotel sign from the cafe corner. And that is the same as the town hall with a few changes, and that's just because I did this before I bought the town hall. And a nice sort of retro Art Deco residential building, the other side of the tree. Now in front of all those modulars is my favourite area, I think, so far, which is the Marina. And that's just because it's on so many different levels and looks really quite special. Now, another recommended video is the Destiny's Bounty floating Chinese restaurant, which, as you can see, is in its own deep 3D key. And that's really important. It just shows the benefit of having all these different levels, because what would be a very, very tall hull on a ship, if it was on a very flat setup with sea level being the same as ground level, it would just tower above other buildings. But because it's got a sort of penalty of 5 brick height, it's only a little bit above street level, which makes it fit in a lot better, I think. Then we've got a bait shop. Lots of interesting characters, fishing and swimming. Dive boat, fishing boat, pleasure boats, racing boats, dive boat, fishing boat, pleasure boat, and a luxury yacht. Some very lucky people on it. Then we've got the surf shop and dive shop, I suppose, which is really colourful. And I like the fact that it's very see-through, so it's not blocking a great deal of things. It's got an interesting octopus sign on there on the side of the upper floor, which doesn't have stairs to it. And that's the Paradise Cafe with its growing parrot collection. I may not keep them all there, but that's where they are for now. We've got a second row of shops, which is on a slightly lower level than street level. You can see those steps there. It's just one brick lower, but it just means there's a lot more interest there as well. We've got an ice cream shop with an ice cream topper. I love my 3D signs, as you probably know. We've got a toy shop. And all these separate and lift up very easily, so if you want to have a look at the insides, you can. With a nice toy soldier topper. Citibank. It's currently got a bank robber upside down, trying to break into the safe. Who's got in through the skylight, Mission Impossible style. And then, in a heart to real Nottingham, we've got Old Market Square with some statues on and lots of people milling around on mobility scooters, skateboards, and with dogs and TV crew. Whoops. And then to finish off this area, got the bike shop, which again separates very easily, motorbikes and bicycles. The Doughnut Fancy shop, slight variation on the donut opening with its play feature intact. Our exotic pet shop, which is definitely one of my favourites. There's Johnny Thunder in there with lots and lots of different exotic pets, which are escaping out of the walls and out of the air conditioning. Very good fun. And then unfortunately the river is out of position at the moment. So before we move to the old town, just a quick glance at the tram, which is fully integrated with power functions and lights. And a quick peek inside the casino with roulette there. Blackjack just around the corner. And there's the teller for getting your money back if you've won. And then on to the old town. Well, we've got the Art Deco cinema. There will be more buildings in these spaces in due course. The tour bus. Now, if you don't know this, this is all the different nationalities around the world. Well, not all of them, but they represent you guys. Rather than sending me sig figs, got Irish, Dutch, Spanish, Australian, Eskimo, Canadian, Latin American, German, Native American, Scottish, Scandinavian, Indian, Mexican, and Mohican. And on the ground floor, we've got a New Zealand Kiwi as well. And then on to the old town proper, which is possibly my favourite area. I know I said that about the Marina, but I'm undecided. So we've got these two fabulous old looking buildings. The first of which is the Crown Inn, a pub with Angry Man and Angry Dog, a Carillion hound from Star Wars. There's people celebrating a football win. Next one being the Sightseeing Tour office, where Mrs. Hood is. Not her real job, but where she is in my city. And a blacksmith. The fantastic historic horse statue, which I absolutely adore. But obviously the main thing is the castle on Castle Rock. Now, Castle Rock is the hill in real Nottingham, which the castle is built on. So I've replicated that. And both of the train lines go through it from one end to the other. And we've got all the best features from all of my favourite castles of yesteryear. So we've got the lovely yellow arch from the Black Falcon's Fortress and the rounded turrets from that set as well. But the large gatehouse from the Lion's Castle, or King's Castle, whichever it was. So we've got a knight coming down, and that works, and the portcullis works as well on these winders. So that one's for the drawbridge, that one's for the portcullis. Essential, in my opinion, for any castle. Got an evil wizard in the Wizard's Tower, also from the Black Fortress one. There's 5 videos showing this, so it's well worth a watch. We've got armoury rather, blacksmiths. A nice sign there for the stable. And there's the king. Now this is another tourist destination, just like in real life Nottingham. And we've even got a ghostie in the dungeon underneath the castle. And then we've got Major Oak Hill, being this hill with a mural on the side, which also has both train lines going through it, which is where the drawbridge lands. And there are some evil knights to do some mock battle with our hero. And the Major Oak is there, which is a very old oak tree, which is about 800 years old or something like that. And I've got a nice bald eagle, even though we don't have them in this country, and a nest on the side there. A Mario mural. Some refreshment by way of kebab van. Doesn't he look happy with that? And the coffee chain, another 3D sign, some tables, and our road bridge over the River Trent, which has the working water wheel, and that goes off into the wall. Now the lower part of the river is absent at the moment because we're having to complete the subway station at the moment. But that's got a crocodile lurking under Trent Bridge with a sign and some graffiti, lily pads and a frog. Now all of those have probably escaped the exotic pet store as well. There's a nice bone there from somebody who is eaten. Then last but certainly not least, we've got the subway station with our lovely Spider-Man train modified with the Dutch flag, or toothpaste stripe as I prefer to call it, down the side from the Amtrak branding. We've got a rat dragging a piece of pizza, which was a popular video that went around about a year ago. I didn't know that, I was told that. Got a busker. Now this isn't quite complete, we're going to have a back wall on there behind the train. But you've probably all recently seen this video because it's very popular. We've got Gollum in another cave network as a sort of Easter egg. I'm planning to do a lot more Easter eggs, sort of hidden special things around the city in the future. Then for all those people that mentioned it, I have turned around those bricks on the escalator so they've got the vertical grooves showing rather than the horizontal. And we go up to the ticket level and the stairs up to the beautiful sand green stairway. And there will be several tram stops. Several underground subway stops in my city, ultimately. We've only got one, so the train, when it goes round at the moment, just goes around and around and appears back where it started. But in the future it will have lots of stations, including one in a similar place as this one in the second standing area. which I haven't made yet. There's a lot of this Lego room that I haven't even started to populate yet. But there'll be 2 standing holes, of which I'm in one now, Brick Bay. And the other one will have a subway station, a full station, and then I'll have some more sort of holes in the ground with steps going to one of these elsewhere in the city to represent a full network. And I think I missed that pedestrian bridge. But apart from that, I think that's the tour. Nope, the tour's not over. I forgot to show the rest of the sky. So on the extreme left there, we've got a double lunar space station, which is another video I'd recommend because it was really good fun to do, and I think the results were fantastic. It's been very popular, and that's actually stuck to the ceiling directly, and that's how I represent space. Then we've got 3 jets flying in formation, which I think looks really good, much better than I thought it would for 3 sets that cost me about £6 each. So that's a really good feature as well. And then on the right is the alien mothership from the Alien Conquest line, which I've modified to have a giant, huge gun on top rather than the carrying handle. And it's got its claw. And you can see that that's not stuck to the ceiling, so it's not flying in space. Rather worryingly, it's flying in normal airspace above the city. So let's hope we don't have any more flying saucers in other parts of the city in the future. Spoiler, we will. Haha. So I very much hope you enjoyed the recap or update or first time view, if you're very new, of the whole city. It shows how much we've achieved in 100 videos. I know a lot of them are halls and so on, but they're very important because without the bricks we can't build anything. But I think it's a heck of a lot of progress, really. Now, as to the future, well, the future's even better because this represents about 1/3 of the space in this Lego room. So we've got a heck of a lot more to do. I'm going to fill this entire room with as much as possible. So do join me for the rest of the ride. Now, more specifically to the future, I want to get the train tracks laid. Without that, I can't really have all my trains going round, which is something that's very important to me. And the same goes for my tram line, although I have had that with a temporary stop to enable that to run on a shorter track. I want to have that to its full length as well and running properly. So with that in mind, I want to now complete the loop of both those railway lines on the new tables that I very recently laid in order to do the subway system, and complete them, even if it means that it isn't 100% finished and looking fantastic all the way around, just so I can get those going. And that will enable me to put in as well my main station, which I think, touch wood, I have all the parts for, which will be a very large railway station. And it'll also enable me to start doing all the other bits that link things together, like, for example, my rail bridges across the mouth of Brick Bay. That's something I'm very keen to get on with. I've got designs for those. And the beach, which, as I said before, will be facing the Marina across the bay. And I've got another row of modulars to go in between the station and the beach, including the Peruvian Restaurant, the diner, and the detective's office, and a whole host of other buildings that I really want to get in place. So there's absolutely no limit for quite a while as to what we're capable of doing. Other plans I've got are, as I said earlier, to fill in all the rest of the wall space with facades. I've got 2 in design. I don't think I've got all the pieces for those yet, but I do have some packages that aren't unwrapped yet to do in brick halls, which will help remedy that problem. But most importantly, first of all, I need to finish this subway station so you can see it in its full and final glory. I need to incorporate the walls with the River Trent just so that remains firmly supported with the crocodile in and so on. And then in the longer term, I've got the plans to do an airport, a huge fairground. I've got most of the large rides that are official Lego sets already, but I'm also in the process of designing a few of my own mocks, and that will make a very large fairground, which will essentially be a similar sort of size as to the bit of the city I've done already in the middle, if you exclude the sort of old town and the harbour on the other side. The fairground, I'm thinking, will be sort of about that big, if you will, but on the far, far wall behind us. And then I just need to get all my vehicles and minifigures out, because the streets are still looking rather bare and the roads are looking rather empty. Real life Nottingham's a lot more busy than this. So I'll have to get on with getting my minifigures sorted and my vehicles out and start placing those as I go, as well as adding more aircraft to the ceiling and boats to the harbour. Now, the last thing I said I'd cover was my plans for the channel, and to a large extent these are completely unchanged. I do plan to continue showing you absolutely every step of the journey into building Brick Nottingham, not missing out the more mundane bits, so there will continue to be lots of hauls and some things will be more grand than others. But what I won't do is monetize. I've long been hitting the requirements to monetize, but I'm not going to do that. I don't want a sort of relatively small amount of money just for running ads and spoiling everyone's enjoyment. So I'm not going to add any adverts to my channel. I'm also not going to be seeking referral fees or doing prizes or all sorts of things like that. I'm just going to focus on my city. So as always, thank you very much for watching. Do remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome LEGO videos. And especially comment on this one, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on how the channel's going. And you can give me your encouragement if you like what I'm doing. Or if not, please let me know, because I need to remedy it if not. And next time on Robin Hood Bricks, we will be finishing the subway station. See you next time!